I'm Richard. So this is a little video about fixing some computers from my retro computer collection. I'm afraid the video is a bit long. I think by the time I've got this edited down it's going to be about 35 minutes or so. But spoilers, I did get the computer fixed at the end and I found some quite interesting faults, revealing some design decisions about the computer. So hopefully we'll stick with it and see what fun I had fixing it. Hello, today I'm going to be doing some diagnostics fault findings on these Video Genie computers. The Video Genie was a Tandy Radio Shack TRS-80 clone produced in the late 70s and early 80s by the company EACA from Hong Kong. It's also called the Dick Smith System 80 in Australia and New Zealand. I've got a particular soft spot for these because it was my family's first computer. In Christmas 1980 we got a Video Genie. Not one of these, we sadly sold it when we bought our Amstrad CPC 464, but I've since managed to acquire these. I got this one at a radio rally very cheaply. It was either £3 or £6, but sadly doesn't work, which we'll see in a moment. And I got this one, somebody on Twitter had free in his parents' attic, wanted to see to go to a good home, so I got hold of that. Sadly it also has the same fault as this one. But then I also bought this one off eBay, which is a later Genie 2, that doesn't have the built-in cassette deck. It has a numeric keypad, so it has to be used with a disk interface, but I've also got the disk interface with this. And other changes, added the numeric keypad and got rid of the TV out because I thought business users would only use the composite video out. It's also quite nice that I've got all three of these because it shows the different revisions. This second revision here on the cassette deck, it has a view meter and a volume control to get accurate tape loading, whereas the first model didn't have that, and that was a cause of issues, I believe. Also, the keyboard layout changed over the years. This one has no arrow keys, whereas the second one has arrow keys here and here. This one does actually have the arrow keys, they're just not labelled as such. These are the up and down arrows, backspace with the left arrow and tab with the right arrow, but not really very convenient for cursor movement or games. So they relabelled them and rearranged them to be convenient on this one, which was the layout we had and was really nice. And on the Genie 2, as well as adding the numeric keypad, they moved the arrow keys up here to make room for a second shift key, which presumably they thought was good for business use. I'm now going to power these on and show you the faults, and then we can get on to diagnosing. So here we have it all connected up, and this is what happens with one that works. We turn it on, we get a flash of garbage on the screen, and then we get the ready prompt. Instead of the mem size on a TRS-80. We do that again, you see this flash of garbage and the screen clears. If we put it, connect up monitor to this one, then this one, we get the garbage and it just stays there. Now apparently this is, I've done lots of looking at the schematics of these. This is a very common failure mode because it has a separate video board that does the character generation. And when you power it on, you just get the random characters from the video RAM from the video board. And if the main board doesn't boot up, it doesn't get to the clearing the screen. So it could be anything, RAM, ROM, CPU, glue logic. It's possible even the connection between the main board and the video board, but we'll look into that. Well, I have the Video Genie service manual, which has disassembly diagrams, main board layout, schematics, very basic troubleshooting flowcharts, and a bit on theory on operation. I've studied lots of these schematics to work out what's sort of going on. I've also got TRS-80 diagnostic guide here because it's very similar. There's very few hardware differences. Multimeter, logic probe, 16-channel logic analyzer if we need to enter it, and we'll see how we get on. I'm a software developer. I know nothing about all this. This is all a huge learning curve for me, but it's going to be kind of interesting. I'll just dip in and out on the video when I discover anything that's worth showing. So here we've got the cassette video Genie opened up. It's quite a simple computer. We've folded over the keyboard here. I think this might be able to be disconnected, but I'm not 100% sure, so I've carefully folded that over to get access to the boards. Cassette unit, power supply. This is the interface board, video circuitry and cassette circuitry, character generation ROM, 7 video RAM. It's only got 7-bit rather than 8-bit, which is why, because it hasn't got the lowercase mod like the TRS-80. And this is a CPU board, which is where I'm going to focus on. Power comes in from the power supply here. We've got a 5-volt regulator and a 12-volt regulator, because the dynamic RAM needs plus and minus 5 volts and 12 volts to run. Z80 CPU, 3 ROMs there. I think they're 4K each, 12K of ROM, and various other interfacing chips. Now I've already checked from my multimeter the power supply. It's supposed to have 8 volts, which is regulated down to 5, and plus or minus 15. They are, I think it was 11 volts and plus or minus 21 on an open circuit, but according to the service manual, those are within spec. I've checked the voltage regulator. That's putting out 11.99 volts on the 12-volt regulator. I couldn't get access to the output of the 5-volt regulator particularly easily from this side, but I've checked the voltages on various parts of the board. For instance, the Z80 is pins 11 and 29, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, so there and there, I think it is. No, I've got those two wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, I was one out. And there gives me 4.9 volts. And the dynamic RAM, we've got the ground on the corner there, and then this one should be 5 volts, it's 4.92. This corner should be 12, it's 11.98, and this one should be minus 5, and it's minus 5.34. Now interestingly, there's no voltage regulator for the minus 5 volt rail. Looking at the schematic, it seems to just use a resistor, kind of voltage divider, I suppose, to get it down to from minus 15 to minus 5. But it's minus 5.34, and I looked at the specs for the dynamic RAM, and that's within spec. So that's okay. I've checked the voltages at all 8 RAM chips and at the Z80. I've also done the classic check for the temperature. All the RAM doesn't seem to be particularly much above ambient temperature. The ROMs are a bit warm, but you can only just detect the heat out of them. The Z80 is quite warm, but then that might be what you expect from a running CPU. So yeah, I've done all the basics. I think it's now to start working through the troubleshooting guide. Get out the logic probe, possibly the logic analyzer. I'm not finding an easy 5-volt rail to clip my logic probe onto, so I'll have a hunt around, see if I can find something. If not, I might have to get out the logic analyzer anyway, because that's got much smaller clips. So I've managed to get the logic probe working. Got a ground off the regulator here, 5-volt regulator, and I found a 5-volt going into this resistor, presumably coming off this regulator. And so I can check a ground there and a 5-volt there on the memory chips. So I've been probing the Z80, and this is all looking a bit suspicious. So here we've got all the address lines, address 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, so they're all high. there's the clock signal, so that's pulsing. So we've got a clock to Z80, but then we've got data lines 4, 3, 5 and 6, so they're all floating. And we've got a 5 volts, then we've got data 2, data 7, data 0, data 1, so they're all floating. And over here we've got more address lines, address 10, 9, 8, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0, and then we get the ground. So all the address lines are high and the data lines are floating, so that just looks like it's not doing anything really. We need to go and look this up a bit. It might be that 40 RAM or 40 ROM causes that behaviour. I mean, it's tempting to open up my good Genie and just start swapping over chips. Well, that's a bit of a pain because I don't have an IC puller. I've ordered one, but it hasn't arrived yet. So I'd have to pull these out using the old screwdriver technique. But it'd be kind of nice to work from first principles and actually work out what's going wrong. More tests required. I've done a fair bit of research on diagnosing problems, and it doesn't seem to be a particularly clear way of diagnosing just by probing. There's various stuff in the technical manuals about cutting the jumpers here for selecting how much RAM is in there, and to try and get different patterns to come on the screen. That's a little bit destructive, and I didn't fully understand the instructions. I'd have to read them a bit better. And most of the repair guides talk about swapping out known good parts. So given I've got a known good machine, I decided to do that. I just didn't want to have to get another machine up and open here, but I've done that. So I figured I'd start with the RAM because that seems to be the most likely in what I've seen in other repair guides. And they're easier to get out than the ROMs and the Z80 and more replaceable. So I've already tested this one. So rather than taking good parts out of the good machine, putting them in here, this is quite likely to have multiple faults. So just putting one good chip in here isn't necessarily going to fix it. So I'm going to try and put chips from the bad machine into the good machine and see when it stops working to try and identify bad components. So I've already done this one, taking out that RAM chip. So now I've got to move on to the second one. Here's the known good one I've taken out of that RAM position, and so here's the one I've just taken out of there. So put it into the socket. It's annoying I don't have the IC puller, so I'm having to pull them out with screwdrivers, but just doing it very, very carefully. So seat that in there, turn it on, and we get a ready prompt. So that one seems to be good. So it's 2 down, 6 to go, and if those all work, then I'll move on to the processor and the ROM. And if that doesn't work, then I have to start probing the other stuff. Well, all 8 of those RAM chips checked out, worked fine in that machine, and indeed if I powered up the machine with that chip missing, then I just got garbage on the screen. So that means all that RAM is good. So next on to the Z80. Which is a bit scary to pull out, and indeed I've slightly bent a couple of the pins as I pulled it out without a proper puller. So I'll have to fix that in a moment, but meantime let's put the Z80 from this machine in there and see if it works. Okay. Aha! And we're getting garbage on the screen on the good machine. So that's suggesting there's a problem with that Z80. Let's try straightening the pins on the other one and put it back into that machine and see what happens. So I've straightened these pins as best I can with a plier. I've fit a pair of pliers. I think that should work. I've also got this rather nifty IC pin straightener, but it only does the lateral straightening, not this way. but I'll use this to get the pins nice and in line so they go nice and easily into the socket. Now let's try it out. Moment of truth. Will this good CPU in this machine cause it to spring to life? Let's see. Oh, well, we're closer. So it's come to life. We don't get the garbage, but we're getting some odd bit patterns on there. Let's try reset. Oh, now that definitely looks like a kind of ready, but with a yeah, each time I do the reset, I'm definitely getting. Oh, and now we're getting ready down here. So that's it. Fascinating. It's also interesting. It's kind of like 65535, which is the highest memory address. Why would it be putting that out on the screen? Because it should just be putting out other information. The fact that some of these bits are shifted means maybe it's pointing to bad video RAM, or possibly one of the address lines not getting through. But still, big progress. So yeah, let's see. Try swapping some things out now and see where it goes. Does it do? Ah, yes. So there, I've got a ready prompt there. Definitely video RAM, I think, because as it scrolled up there, we get corruption up here. Fascinating. I have a theory about what's going on here with the video problem. So it's only at the top of the screen. It's the top 6.5 lines. It goes 32 characters across. Why it's only the top half, I'm not sure. When we come down here, everything's mostly okay. Not quite at the bottom. I've written a little program. In fact, that's not okay, because that should say for x equals 1 to 1024, print A and next. But it's got all corrupted. And if I run that, it then does actually fill the screen with A's until it gets to the top half, when they turn into shimmering ats. And an at is ASCII 64 and an A is 65. So they're one bit out from each other in bits position 0. So that suggests that bit 0 is oscillating. And similarly, if we then clear the screen, then we get exclamation marks rather than spaces, but they are shimmering. So an exclamation mark is ASCII 33, a space is 32. So again, it looks like bit 0 is flipping. And that would also explain why ready has the R's is turning into an S and the D is turning into an E. So yeah, looking at the schematics, well, I've already looked at them, but basically bit 0 should be Z18 IC, which is the memory down here, so it should be that chip. So it might be that chip's faulty, it might be something to do with the address logic or data logic going to that chip is faulty. Unfortunately, I can't just pull a chip out of this working Genie 2 because it's got a later interface board with the lowercase mod. So whereas here we've got 7 1 kilobit chips, which give us 1K of video memory, but only 7 bits rather than 8 bits. So for the lowercase mod, they needed 8 bits, and if they're doing that, they might as well go up to 4K, 4 kilobit. So that gives you 8 kilobits or 1 kilobyte of video RAM at 8 bits. So I can't just swap them out, but I do have that other Genie over there, so maybe I need to take that one apart to get some video RAM. I could also prove this before I do that by just swapping over the RAM chips and see if it moves to a different bit position. That would confirm my hypothesis. And it just occurred to me to do another part of diagnosis to confirm my theory that if I leave that bit 0 RAM chip out and turn it on, what happens? Well, this is what happens. We get a screen full, completely full of steady exclamation marks. The shimmering's just on my camera. So that shows that if that bit is missing, that it just sets it high for everything. So the fact that it's oscillating suggests that I'm onto the right track, that was the faulty RAM chip. And here's my confirmation of my diagnosis. I've swapped over bit 0 and bit 7, and now the top half of the screen has turned into graphics characters, which are indicated by the bit 7 being set. But again, only the first so many characters. So it looks like that chip is faulty, that about a third of it is just giving random results rather than the bits that are being sent into it. But it kind of confirms that the address and data logic is fine, because if it hadn't, then when I swapped the chip, that it would have stayed with that bit rather than moving with the chip. So now let's see if I can find a good chip in one of the other machines. I've now swapped out a video RAM chip from machine number 3 into this one. And the good news is it's fixed the video RAM, so I've no longer got those shimmering extra characters. But there's still something very odd going on. So I haven't managed to figure this out yet. So you see this little program listing there that looks like complete garbage, but it is in there correctly. You can see there line 10 when I list it back for x equals 1 to 1024, but it's got some of the spaces are replaced with ats, and the O is replaced with a slash. And as I typed it in, it came out FO2 instead of FOR. X became 8, so there's some weird substitutions going on. There's an extra at the end of the ready, although is that supposed to have a question mark? I can't remember. I don't think it does. And as you type the characters, so if I do like A, I get like an underscore, and then the second one it comes okay. So I'm getting that weird at symbol at the end every alternate time. So is it alternate columns? So that should be SN error. But if we run this, because it looks like it's a corrupt program, but the program is there. It was to print 1024 A's, which is all coming out okay, so the screen memory is all good now. Yeah, so in fact, and that A has become an exclamation mark. But it's okay in the program memory because it can execute the program. So it's something about going when it lists the program, or when it's outputting characters to the screen, they're getting corrupted. So that suggests that the CPU and RAM is all fine, but it's something about the connection in between that and the video board. So maybe it's this connector between the two. Maybe I should investigate that, or it could be some of the other logic. Maybe I'll go back to the schematic and have a look. And now I've thought about it some more. That hypothesis is wrong, because there's no problem in the data getting to screen memory, because when I run the basic program to print out all these A's, I get a whole load of A's in screen memory. So that's fine. It's like the keyboard input routine and the output of the basic listing. So it's the basic listing is in memory correctly because it executes, but it's the printing out, which is now making me suspect one of the ROMs. So I've got these 3 ROMs down here. Maybe I'll try swapping them out with the ROMs in this unknown machine I don't know if that machine works. Slightly reluctant to take ROMs out of the Genie 2 because they've actually got 4 ROMs. You see there's an extra kind of thing here, and it's designed for the Genie 2. I don't think there's not a lot of hardware differences, but still. Let's try these, see what happens. I've now swapped out these 3 ROMs from this unknown machine with here, and I powered it on as I swapped each ROM. Indeed, if a ROM's missing, it just gives garbage on the screen and power up. But yeah, all 3 replaced, and it's still working the same as before, but getting some weird results as I type in characters. Well, the good news is it means the ROMs out of this unknown machine are probably good. But yeah, now I need to figure out how to diagnose what's going wrong now. So I've just been having a little bit more think about this problem, and I'm wondering if it might be video RAM after all. And I've gone and printed out a ASCII conversion chart that has all the binary representations on, just to make the maths a little bit easier for me. But looking at this, just the initial message, which should be ready, question mark, and an underscore cursor. So we've got a 9 instead of the Y, and indeed the 9 and the Y are basically just 1 bit out. It's bits 1, 2, 3, 4, bit 5, right? No, bit 6 is different. And then we have question mark and the underscore, which is correct, and then at, that should be a space there, and at and the space, again, bit 6 is different on those. Am I right? No, hang on. There's actually 2 bits flipped on those. But there's something strange going on. They are moving in between these two columns in the ASCII chart. And the other strange thing is if we just do space here, so we've got underscore at, and then the underscore moves over, which is the underscore is the cursor, but the at, which is a space that we've typed, becomes an at. And then if we do this again, then we get the correct space whiting out that underscore, but now we get the underscore in the correct position but a new at. And so if we keep going, the underscore keeps switching, so it's as if every other space is getting 1 bit shifted. So I'm going to go and do a few calculations, because I did my little test when I filled the screens with A's, but maybe the A doesn't have the right bit pattern to get changed, because if 1 bit is stuck high or something like that. So I think I'm going to repeat that program with filling the screen with a few different characters with particular bit patterns and see what we've got. And here we finally have some success. Everything is working okay. It turned out to be video RAM. I was getting myself a little bit confused with this ASCII chart. I was thinking, oh, it's bit 6. Actually, no, I was saying, well, it's bit 6 and 7 are getting swapped over, which just seemed very odd. But I had forgotten the way this 7-bit ASCII works. It's really quite convoluted. And I've drafted 3 blog posts about how this works last year, but I haven't quite finished them, so I haven't got around to publishing them yet. But essentially, you've got 7 bits of memory rather than 8 to save on chips in the original TRS-80 design. Also, possibly to mask a faulty character generation ROM in the original TRS-80s, because the lowercase in them was just bad. But so what they did was, although the ASCII chart has all the capital letters here, it's actually using, these are the ASCII codes that it's storing in RAM, but it's using this column out of the character generation ROM. And it has a little bit of logic that will look at the first 3 bits. As you know, I think it looks at, it looks at bits 5 and bit 7, and then works out to which column you're in from them, and then flips you over from this column into this column by inserting the bit 6 if it needs it to get into this column of the character generation ROM. So that means I was actually, although I thought it was mixing up these 2 columns, it's actually mixing up these 2 columns, which is purely down to bit 6 here, but that's created from bit 5 in the memory. And these chips here go bit 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, because there is no bit 6. And so once I realised that was the smoking gun for this chip, I swapped it over with another one, and I then got a different one. Instead of ready, I got VD coming out. And so I've then nicked another RAM chip off this donor machine, swapped that in, and everything seems to be working. So that means I've got 3 dead chips, a Z80 and 2 RAM chips for the video board. So I'll have to see if I can get replacements for them. And the next job will probably be while I've got this one open, to see if I can get that working. So take some donor parts from this, swap them out to there, and yeah, see what's what. So thanks for sticking with me through all this. It's getting late. I'll see if I can get this edited and uploaded. And I'll leave it to the next video for looking at this other machine over there. Thanks.